Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, Executive Director of Klamath Film, and you just watched Cooped Up, proof that even superheroes can get the blues during a global pandemic in our Northern Shorts category for the Klamath Independent Film Festival. Joining us now is the director of this film, Taylor Morden. Taylor, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us.
Thanks for having me.
So, 2020, the constant barrage of bummers that is this year, just kind of one body blow and uppercut after another. Uh, I'm sure it's going to make for some really interesting art over the next couple of years. But what made you think about the superheroes perspective during a global pandemic?
So for this one of the writers, the guy who came up with the concept, is a buddy of mine named Russ Burlingame, and he works over at comicbook.com. And he was putting together a kind of a mashup thing where he had a bunch of filmmakers do little shorts for a Legends of Tomorrow, DC's Legends of Tomorrow themed uh, parody film. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but basically he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to work on it. And I said, well, one of my good friends was Hawkman on Legends of Tomorrow. Right? This is the guy. So if we can come up with a Hawkman short, I think I can kind of knock this out of the park. So it really came from, somebody wanting to do a fun Legends of Tomorrow themed quarantine project. And then me, I've done several short films with my buddy Falk, who plays Hawkman on the show, and I pitched it to him, and he was on board. He's like, "That sounds like a lot of fun." So we kind of tweaked the script to make it doable remotely because we couldn't be in the same place. I directed that over FaceTime, so it was quite the project.
I was curious, and I know you're a huge pop culture guy. I didn't understand why Hawkman, of all of the superheroes that you could pick, if there was some personal reflection of Hawkman, or how personal this story was as a reflection of your experience being stuck at home during COVID, or
Right.
what. But that makes sense then that your friend was there. So because our judges loved this film and loved the concept of that a superhero can be stuck at home during a pandemic too. But the question also was, of all the superheroes, why Hawkman?
Yeah, well, my friend is the actor who played Hawkman, and then because of that, we had access. The woman who plays Hawk Girl on the show is in it too. She's on the phone there, which we had to write around. How can we do that? She's in LA, we're in Oregon, and so we had access. The guy who did the music was the guy who did the music for the TV show. So we kind of got to make a little 3-minute episode of Legends of Tomorrow. So yeah, the characters chose us. We didn't, I could have chosen Batman, I guess, but everybody does Batman.
I was curious how difficult it was to try to assemble a cast and crew, because right now so many productions are shut down because of the ongoing coronavirus. So how does it come about even producing? I know you've been doing a ton of film work. So how do you coordinate cast and crew and coordinate directing uh, during a global pandemic? I know there's all these added protocols with PPE that cast and crew have to have on, but it sounds like this was done totally remotely. So how do you even pull that off?
Well, yeah, we were very lucky. Falk, the actor who plays Hawkman, had a friend of his quarantined with him who was a DP, and they had been together for the whole thing. This was in April, so we were all like a month in. Everybody had been locked down, but they had been staying there from LA and just like didn't want to be quarantined in LA, so they came up to Bend at the very beginning, and he was just there. So what we did, the way we pulled it off, is I storyboarded it. We wrote the script remotely. I storyboarded it, put the storyboards with my camera, lenses, microphones, and everything in a box, set it outside of my house, wiped it off with the alcohol wipes and the Lysol and everything. They came and picked up the box, took it home, and they would set up the shots from the storyboards. And then I was on FaceTime so I could see the back of the camera and kind of, okay, that's going to work. And just direct it via FaceTime, which is harder than I thought it was going to be, but I think it was a really interesting exercise in like making something work.
Totally. So 2020 has shut down tons of film production, and people right now are scrambling to try to figure out how to work. My buddies in Hollywood that I've talked to said, "Well, everyone's reading a whole lot of scripts right now, and there's a lot of animation work going on. So I guess we can expect a whole bunch of animated films in the next year or two." Uh, but you seem to be busier than ever. You had a documentary that was in last year's Klamath Independent Film Festival, Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s, which is still going strong. You have another film in KIFF this year with the documentary, The Last Blockbuster. You had a cool Back to the Future project earlier this year, and now Cooped Up on top of that. Now I know you're working on some sci fi things as well. Where do you find this time, man? Is there like a 25th hour in the day that I'm not aware of? Because I'm hurting right now.
Yeah. I don't know how to turn it off. Like the quarantine happened, we're all locked up, and I can't sit still. So, like the Back to the Future thing and Cooped Up, these are projects I've just figured out how can I keep doing stuff during this time. And like you said, I've got a sci-fi script that I wrote in this time, and we're in pre-production on that. And I, and wrapping up the last blockbuster and getting it out for distribution. It's all. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how people can not keep working. You're putting together a film festival during all this, so it's you get it.
And working a day job on top of that too.
There
So
you go.
uh, I really love the special effects for this film. They come in subtly, and you do have some of the Hawkman elements, but when you watch it, it kind of takes a minute to realize what it is. At first you just think it's a guy stuck in his apartment who's kind of going crazy. And then he sprouts wings all of a sudden. The effects were
Right.
really well done. So, did you do those, or did you have a friend kind of help out on the production for it, or who did the special effects? And how long did it take?
I would have to look up his name, but it was a friend of Falk's, actually in Germany, I think, who did those effects for us. And it took about a month. We sent him the
Mhm.
footage when we were in the rough cut, and he did that. We also had somebody do sound design remotely. It was all remote for this. I didn't meet the guy who did the effects or the music guy or the sound effects. I didn't even meet the actress who played Hawkgirl. It was all done remotely, remotely, remotely. And I was the voice of the Blockbuster employee because we didn't have anybody else. So it just kind of worked out. But it was a lot of just emails and remote working, all over the world.
Now, normally I ask if there's any fun behind the scenes stories, but this production is so different in that no one was actually in the same room together. I'm more curious about from the director's standpoint of how you even pull that off or get the performances that you want when you can't physically be there to interact. Did you set up like a remote camera so that you could view the takes being done, or how does that even work to direct when you're not physically there?
Right. I had a proxy, basically. The there was someone else there, right? The lead actor's partner, she was there holding a phone, so I could see the whole setup, right? I could see the camera and I could watch the performances. It was a little choppy, I'd have to wait for the take to be over and action and cut and all that through a phone. But it worked, and I wouldn't have tried it had I not worked with the actor before, and we knew, this was proposed to us as like, just do this short, it's for a fun thing, it's going to be fun. And I was like, well, I think we can pull that off, and if we can't, it'll still be fun, we'll try, right? So that's kind of what it was.
You ever stop at any point and look back and think this is so absurd? The fact that we can actually make a film without anyone being in the same. Like, did that kind of that moment kind of set in for some? Like, we're doing this, but how the hell are we doing this?
Yeah, I thought for sure, that it was. I just feel fortunate that this happened in 2020 and we had this kind of technology available to us. And like I said, I was able to put my camera equipment in a box and set it out, and they could pick it up. And so it's like I don't know, it's like a kind of a magical world we live in where you can do stuff like this remotely. Like you and I are talking right now from hundreds of miles apart. And that's just the magic of this world. If this pandemic had happened in the 90s, we'd all be by ourselves reading magazines and watching VHS tapes. So this is better.
So, yeah. So, what do you hope that people get out of this film, Cooped Up?
I hope it's like a little window into kind of that time. We made this early in the pandemic, right? The mask on the table was an N95 because no one had made cloth masks yet. So it was very not just a specific 2020 thing, but a specific like April of 2020 thing. And we tried to make it a little silly and a little fun, but it's I don't know. For me, some people write in journals or do whatever, but I just make stuff, and then 5 years later, I can look back and go, "Oh yeah, that was that crazy year."
It does make for an interesting time capsule. As fun as it is to be able to play with superheroes and whatnot on film, this is a film that could really only be made this year, right? Like
Hmm.
this is the kind of thing that would not make any sense in 2019. Everyone would say, "What even is this?"
Yeah.
So, do you have any final thoughts about Cooped Up that you'd like to share?
No, this has been fun. We've now talked for longer than the film is, so that's magical.
Well, thank you, Taylor, for this very cool slant on the pandemic, bringing some levity to 2020 in what's been a pretty frustrating year. It's fun to be able to laugh a little bit and take a different spin on things. And in addition to being available all weekend long, people can catch Cooped Up in person at the Ross Raglan Theater here in Klamath Falls on Sunday, September 20th, in our Northern Shorts block at 3:45 p.m. for the 8th annual Klamath Independent Film Festival. Taylor, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.